Hello, and welcome to Bennett Property Management. We are a proud property management company who has been serving the Phoenix Valley Metro and Mesa since 1972, and we are excited for you to join the family. Over the next 15 minutes, we will be going over your new lease and its terms.
While this overview is a complete summary, we advise that you read it thoroughly and to address any questions that you may have to your property manager.
Now let's review the lease in front of you. The first thing you will see is a review and breakdown of financial responsibilities and their due dates. These monies must be paid by cashier's check or money order according to the described schedule. Moving down the page, we can review the physical address and description of your new home.
Now let's look at the first clause in the contract, the term. The term describes the length of the contract and what the total rent is within those dates. Please note two things. The contract does continue on a month-to-month basis, and the month-to-month status does not terminate until either party has given a written, 30-day legally served notice.
Let's move down to the next clause, rent. Here you will find the monthly rent amount and the sales tax on that rent. We will accept online payment before 3 p.m. on the 3rd, one personal check, one cashier's check, or money orders for rent, and we will not accept partial payments without authorization. Your rent is due on the first day of the month. If it is not received in our office by 5:30 p.m. on the 4th day of the month, you will accrue late fees. A late charge of $50 will be assessed on the 5th, and an additional $10 will accrue per day thereafter until paid in full. After 5:30 p.m. on the 4th, only cashier's checks and money orders will be accepted. Payment of rent is only complete upon acceptance by Bennett Property Management. Furthermore, a $25 dishonored check fee plus appropriate late charges will be required until guaranteed funds are paid for any returned check. We will not accept personal checks for rent after the second return check. All future payments must be made in guaranteed funds. As the rental agreement continues month to month after the term dates expire, there will be a month-to-month holdover fee of $100 plus tax each month in addition to the stated rent amount. In the next clause, multiple occupancy, it is understood that all signatory tenants in this agreement are equally responsible for all rents and other provisions in the lease.
Our next clause is utilities. Utilities and services that are the tenant's responsibility must be turned on by the tenant prior to occupancy, and must remain on and in good standing throughout the period of the move-out inspection. Further, any needed utility for property rehabilitation beyond reasonable wear and tear, or tenant outstanding utility balances will be the tenant's financial responsibility.
Let's move down the page to the animals clause. Only authorized pets are allowed on the premises. The landlord must approve any additions to the animal stated specifically in this clause, and any breach will result in a $400 penalty. Further, animals must be maintained, licensed as required by law, and properly immunized. Any and all animal issues are solely the tenant responsibility, financially and legally.
And now we move on to community rules. It is the tenant's responsibility to comply with all CC&Rs and HOA regulations. Additionally, any fines or penalties assessed are the tenant's responsibility as well. While community amenities may be available, they are not a basis for rent.
Ordinances and Statutes Clause. Tenant is required to comply with all ordinances and statutes.
Our next clause is crime-free. As participants in the crime-free initiatives across the state of Arizona, Bennett Property Management will enforce the stated crime-free policies in this clause. Any violations by the tenant, a member of the tenant's household, guest, or any other person affiliated with the tenant on or near the premises will result in material breach of this agreement and serve as good cause for termination of this rental agreement.
Hello, and welcome to Bennett Property Management. We are pleased that you have chosen to lease a home through our company. There are many things to consider when you are leasing a rental property. For example, how can I pay my rent? I highly recommend that you sign up to pay your rent online. Information about online rental payments will be provided to you during your lease signing. Your property manager is your contact person during the term of your lease. Please make sure you know the name and contact information of your property manager. If you have a maintenance concern at your property, Did you know that you can submit a work order request online at bennetttorentit.com? That's bennetttorentit.com. We hope that your leasing experience with us is a pleasant one. We have almost 45 years of property management experience in the Valley of the Sun and are a full-service real estate professional management company. If at the end of your lease you are ready to buy a home, please consider contacting us to help you find one. In the meantime, thank you once again for choosing a rental property managed by Bennett Property Management.
Moving on, we'll find use. Use of the premises is reserved for those specifically stated in this lease. Any guest staying more than 14 days must have landlord consent. There will be a fine of $400 if there is found to be an unauthorized occupant.
Assignment and subletting. Tenant may not assign or sublet any portion of the premises.
Inventory. Any furnishing or equipment to be furnished by the property owner will be listed in an inventory, signed by the landlord and the tenant.
Moving on, we have maintenance, repairs, and alterations. Tenant is accepting the property in as-is condition, unless otherwise listed in this agreement. Tenant responsibilities for care and maintenance of the premises is at their own expense, which includes, but are not limited to, the following: keeping the interior clean and sanitary, cleaning the carpet when it becomes soiled, replacing AC filters at least once a month, replacing burnt-out light bulbs, any exterminating needs, plunging any drain before contacting the landlord, and keeping all non-operational vehicles off the property. Tenant must report any maintenance item to Bennett Property Management in a timely manner. Failure to report any items or repairs may result in tenant responsibility for damages. For emergencies only, we provide emergency maintenance phone number. Property damage as a result of direct act or negligence by any tenant or guest shall be the tenant's responsibility.
The next clause is damages to premises. If the property is damaged to the extent that it is untenantable, and this damage is not a tenant or tenant invitee cause, then either party may give notice to terminate within 15 days. If the lease is not terminated, the property will be repaired and reasonable accommodations made as described in this clause.
Moving forward, entry by landlord. There are 3 reasons for the landlord to enter the property under this agreement. Any entry by the landlord will be made under the framework of this clause. Tenant may not deny access or prevent lawful entry by landlord or landlord's agents. Tenant agrees to pay a fine and all other costs associated with denial or refusal of access.
Moving on to indemnification. Tenant agrees to hold landlord harmless for any claims, except injury or damages for which the landlord is legally responsible.
Physical possession. Tenant may terminate this agreement if the landlord is unable to deliver possession within 5 days of the commencement date of this lease. Please take a moment to review this clause.
And now, the default clause. Any failure by tenant to pay rent or perform in any way other than described in this lease, the landlord, at his option, may terminate all tenant's rights as prescribed by law, unless the tenant within the legally prescribed time cures the default. Landlord may discard items abandoned at the premises. Tenant agrees to the administrative fee in the event of any default. Additionally, tenant is responsible for any expenses incurred from breach of this lease.
Security. The security deposit is held in a trust to secure the tenant's performance within this agreement. The tenant cannot apply this money to the last month's rent.
The next clause is attorney's fees. To enforce the terms of this agreement, the losing party agrees to pay all attorney's fees.
We move on to jury trial waiver. The parties of this lease agree to have any court disputes decided by a judge only.
Next we'll find deposit refunds. Tenant must provide proper 30-day notice as per this lease agreement. Tenant must also return possession of property by returning keys to the landlord. Tenant may be required to file statements of final payments to all utility companies. The property must also be returned in rent-ready condition. Please do not leave keys and garage remotes locked within the rental dwelling. The balance of all deposits are issued to all lease signers, and the tenant agrees to provide a forwarding address. Any legal notice by either party must be done in writing.
Notices. Any legal notice served to the tenant will result in a $10 fee or actual cost of delivery.
Subordination. This lease agreement is subordinate to any other agreement. Waiver. Forgiveness in breach of one term in this agreement by either party does not invalidate obligation to the other terms of this contract. Holding over. After lease expiration, with landlord consent, this lease continues on a month-to-month basis under the same terms. Proper notice is required to terminate this agreement. Any holding over by a tenant without landlord consent will result in damages.
Time. Time is of the essence in this agreement.
We have now reached the additional terms and conditions. If a pool is provided at the premises, or as a community amenity, please review these two areas thoroughly.
Tenant assumes responsibility for all current windows and screens at the property.
Renter's insurance is recommended. We provide no protection for tenant personal property.
As tenant may be responsible for AC unit damage, AC filters must be changed by a tenant on a monthly basis.
On the next page, we'll find mold disclosure. Mold is not easily detectable. As such, landlord is not aware of any dangerous mold present at the property. If the presence of mold is a material matter, tenant must conduct tests and inspections prior to signing this lease.
Yard maintenance is the tenant's responsibility unless otherwise stated in this lease. Tenant acknowledges any and all dangers inherent with yard maintenance and property upkeep and accepts those liabilities.
Tenant agrees to accept full responsibility for all actions on the property by the tenant or the tenant's guests.
If the tenant lacks the ability or knowledge to maintain the premises, the tenant agrees to seek out professionals to maintain the property. If an appliance such as a washer, dryer, or refrigerator are provided, these clauses indicate who is responsible for their maintenance.
Smoking is not allowed inside the dwelling, including the garage space, unless otherwise indicated here. Failure to comply will result in a $500 fine for each occurrence and any subsequent damages.
Carpets must be professionally cleaned upon move-out, and receipt for cleaning is required.
Lost keys, lockout. In case of lost keys or lockout, agent may be available to provide a key during business hours. In all other cases, please contact the Phoenix Easy Keys at 480-433-7738 to rekey the property at our own expense.
Any 30-day notice to vacate the premises must be delivered in writing on or before the rental due date, and is only effective from the rental due date.
Bennett Property Management, acting as landlord, represents the owner of the property in this transaction.
Tenant is provided with a move-in checklist, which must be filled out and returned within 5 calendar days after move-in. If this list is not turned in within that time, the tenant accepts the property in good condition. Tenant has the right to be present at the move-out inspection.
Tenant accepts that the smoke detector is in working order and accepts the responsibility to maintain it. Please change smoke detector batteries twice per year.
A copy of the Landlord-Tenant Act is available at the Arizona Department of Housing.
If the property was built before 1978, you will be receiving a lead-based paint disclosure.
Tenant may obtain a copy of the CC&Rs online or from the HOA management company. On the last page, we have several areas to initial and sign. Let's start with the HOA rules. If this property is within an HOA, you will be provided with a copy of the HOA rules. Tenant agrees to pay any fines levied for violation of HOA and CC&R rules.
Tenant will be accepting the listed entry devices.
Tenant is acknowledging the receipt of a signed copy of this contract.
Please acknowledge that you have viewed this video presentation. If any other acknowledgements are listed here, please review them with your manager.
This contract may only be modified by all signers in writing.
Your manager will indicate here on the contract how the HOA rules were delivered if applicable.
Please sign and date this contract appropriately, as indicated on the right-hand side.
And finally, fill in all the contact information below to make our responses to your needs as fast as possible. Remember that you can always use our website to do maintenance requests, review this lease, search for future rentals, or connect with a sales agent when you choose to buy a home. If you have any questions about this lease, please direct them to your manager immediately. Thank you for viewing this presentation.
And thank you for joining the Bennett Property Management family of properties.